Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day today. So today we are talking about chapter 3 and physical activity in our society. Now what I've done is I've broken this up into 4 different parts because there's just so much material in this chapter. So today we are talking about part 1, which is cultural competency. So societal trends influence professionals and professions in physical education, exercise science, and sport in our society. One significant trend is the changing demographics of our population. Our society is more culturally diverse than at any other time in its history. This diversity will become even greater as we move farther into the 21st century. This diversity, as professionals committed to enriching the lives of all people, we must, as Competency says, increase our consciousness and appreciation of differences associated with heritage, characteristics, and values of people. 2 other societal trends that hold implications for physical education, exercise science, and sport are the wellness movement and the fitness and physical activity movement. The wellness movement emphasizes the individual's responsibility to make informed choices that will lead to an optimal state of health. Disease prevention and health promotion are the cornerstones of this movement. In the fitness and physical activity movement, participation in the physical activity by people of all ages is encouraged. There's substantial evidence to support the value of leading a physically active lifestyle across the lifespan. So as we continue to move along in the second decade of the 21st century, the United States is in the midst of demographic changes that will profoundly influence our future as a nation and will greatly affect the nature and conduct of physical education, exercise science, and sport programs. Racial and ethnic diversity grew dramatically in the United States during the last 3 decades of the 20th century and has increased even more in the first 2 decades of the 21st century. Our growing diversity requires that we as physical educators, exercise scientists, and sport leaders be able to work effectively in cross-cultural situations. Changes within and among different population groups, such as children and older adults, determine the demand for education, healthcare, facilities, and other services that meet the needs of different segments of the population. This in turn will influence job opportunities, funding for services, and the nature and conduct of programs designed to serve these populations. In the United States, collectively, we are currently living longer and healthier lives. Public health initiatives, advances in medical science, and improvements in standards of living have contributed to dramatic improvements in the longevity of the population. At the beginning of the 20th century, the average life expectancy in the United States was 47.3 years. In 2013, life expectancy for the U.S. population rose to 78.8 years, with whites and women outliving non-Hispanic blacks and men by 3.8 to 4.8 years. Improvements in health have contributed to the growth of the older population during the last century. In 1900, about 4% of the population was 65 years and older. In 2010, an estimated 40.3 million people, or about 13% of the population, was 65 years and older. The number of older Americans is projected to grow rapidly in the first half of this 21st century. In 2011, the baby boom generation born between 1946 and 1964 began to turn 65. By 2030, it is projected that 1 in 5 people, or 20% of the population, will be 65 years and older. The most rapidly growing segment of the older population is the 85 and older group. In 2010, over 2% of the population was 85 and older. By 2050, it is projected that nearly 5% of the U.S. population will be 85 and older. The number of children in the United States influences the demand for children or schools and teachers, healthcare services, and professionals and facilities and services that serve children and their families. In 2010, there were 74.2 million children, or 24% of the population under the age of 18. This was a decline from the peak of 36% at the end of the baby boom in the 20th century. The percentage of children in our population is projected to remain relatively stable and is estimated to comprise 24% of the population in 2020. As a nation, our cultural diversity continues to grow. The surge in immigration increased our diversity tremendously. The 2010 census data revealed that 16% of the population was of Hispanic or Latino origin, and 84% of the population was non-Hispanic. With respect to non-Hispanic races, 72.4% of the population was white and 12.6% of the population was African American, 0.9% American Indian or Alaskan Native, and 4.8% Asian, and 0.2% Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders. About 3% of the population identified themselves as multiracial. It is predicted by 2050 the U.S. population will grow up to 394 million, 50% of which will be non-Hispanic white origin. Despite this growing population, after 2025, the U.S. population will grow slower than ever before. The Hispanic population is the fastest growing of any racial and ethnic group, and it is estimated that 25% of the population will be Hispanic by the year 2050. Dramatic racial and ethnic changes are expected in the school-age population. In 2013, 50% of public school students were minorities, an increase from 22% in 1972. Black and Hispanic students accounted for 16% and 25% respectively of public school enrollment. In 2025, it is projected that the population of Hispanic children will increase to 29% of all children, whereas the population of white and black students will decrease to 46 and 15% respectively of all children. The changes in the racial and ethnic composition of student enrollment have altered the diversity of language and culture in the nation's schools. In 2013 and 2014, 9.3% of all students, or 4.5 million, were identified as English language learners. There are several school systems in the United States where more than 100 languages are spoken by the students. The variety in culture and language enriches the learning environment while at the same time creating great challenges for the schools. My daughter actually teaches at Fort Bend ISD in Houston, and they are one of those schools that they have over 100 different languages. The many demographic changes that occur in the 21st century present professionals with great challenges and with extraordinary opportunities. As we reflect on the demographic and societal changes, we must ask ourselves what we can do to provide opportunities for participation in physical activity for all people. How can we involve a great number of older people in our programs? How can we design programs that are sensitive to the values and needs of different racial and ethnic populations? How can we provide access to our programs for individuals living in poverty? How do we reach underserved populations? And most importantly, what is our commitment to doing so? Attainment of our goal of lifespan participation in physical activity for all people requires that we do much more than we are currently doing to reach people of all ages, socioeconomic backgrounds, and different population groups. Our nation's increasing cultural diversity makes it imperative that physical education, exercise science, and sports professionals reflect carefully on their view of cultural diversity and their commitment to providing opportunities for lifelong involvement in physical activity for all people. Decency defines cultural diversity as the differences associated with gender, race, national origin, ethnicity, social class, religion, age, and ability and disability. But it can also be extended to include differences in personality, sexual orientation, veteran status, physical appearance, marital status, and parental status. Culture plays a complex, significant role in the health and well-being of all people of all ages. Cultural influences an individual's health, beliefs, behaviors, activities, access to care, adherence to programs, and treatment outcomes. Communication between the professional and the client, player, or student is influenced by cultural norms, including norms related to language and usage, eye contact, personal space, expression of symptoms and concerns, openness or extent of disclosure, and degree of formality in the interaction. Because health is significantly influenced by cultural beliefs, cultural issues should be a major consideration in the design and implementation of health promotion and prevention services, including physical activity programs. Cultural competency requires thoughtful examination of your own cultural heritage and the privileges and disadvantages associated with your culture. It necessitates understanding how power, privilege, oppression, discrimination, stereotypes, and prejudice influence opportunities for different cultural groups. Gaining knowledge of other cultural beliefs, values, and behaviors recognizes that people of different cultures have different ways of communicating and behaving, and learning another language are part of the journey toward cultural competency. This is something that is so needed in our day and time right now with all the things going on around the world. Cultural competency and humility are essential to the achievement of lifespan involvement in physical activity for all people. The significant and complex role that culture plays in the health and well-being of people of all ages makes it important that professionals develop cultural competency and exhibit cultural humility. So understanding culture helps professionals appreciate cultural differences and utilize their knowledge of the strengths and benefits and beliefs of different groups to achieve positive health outcomes and avoid stereotypes and biases that limit services and further contribute to health disparities among different groups. When professionals practice in culturally competent ways, they recognize, value, and appreciate cultural differences. At the end of this chapter, you will be asked to engage in discussions and complete activities that focus specifically on cultural competency and humility to increase your knowledge and awareness of your own culture, as well as the global perspectives of individuals within your community, the United States, and throughout the world. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to talking to you again. We'll be going over part 2 and the wellness movement in our next discussion. Talk to you soon.